on the second floor so it could be used as a shared room for the three kids. That afternoon, I carried my stuff up to the attic and exhaustedly flopped down onto the old mattress. A thick cloud of dust flew up from the mattress, making me cough violently. Just as I scrambled to sit up, a giant spider dropped from the ceiling right onto my head, causing me to scream loudly in pure panic. My frustration, exhaustion, and resentment. Right at my 15th birthday party, just as everyone was getting ready to sing happy birthday, an incident happened. My 1-year-old triplet brothers suddenly got their hands on my favorite childhood teddy bear, the bear I hugged to sleep every single night. In their rough, playful tugging, they yanked it so hard that they ripped a huge hole in its arm. Horrified, I forcefully snatched the bear back from their hands. The sudden movement startled them, and all three of them simultaneously wailed at the top of their lungs. My dream birthday party was completely drowned out by the deafening, ear-piercing cries. My mom frantically rushed over, snatched the bear out of my hands, and harshly scolded me for being violent and selfish with my baby brothers. Not a single person in the house paid any attention to my feelings at that moment. My head felt like it was going to explode from the sheer unfairness. In a moment of losing total control, I screamed and yelled at the babies, "Shut up! Stop crying!" The three toddlers fell silent for a stunned second, and then they instantly wailed and cried 10 times louder. My mom hurriedly tried to soothe them, while my dad turned to look at me with eyes full of absolute disappointment. That look felt like an invisible knife piercing straight through my heart. I burst into loud, uncontrollable sobs. In my blinding anger and extreme self-pity, I kicked and flipped my favorite birthday cake, sending it crashing and smashing into a ruined mess on the floor. And then I turned around and ran for my life. I ran straight up to the attic room, my shabby private space, slammed the door shut, sat hugging my knees, crying alone, and began to recount everything that led to this miserable situation. Hi, I'm Stella. I used to hold a solid empire in my house. I was priority number 1, the only princess, the absolute center of my parents' universe. They had even promised me that I would forever be the only child in this family. I grew up wrapped in a bubble of protection, spoiled like Blair Waldorf from Gossip Girl. But then the unexpected event struck when I was 13. My mom announced she was pregnant. It was like the worst plot twist on Netflix. Even though my parents were completely surprised themselves, my mom held my hand and gently reassured me that the baby would definitely be a wonderful gift for our family. So she hoped I would happily accept it. Because I loved my parents so much, I forced a smile and pushed myself to happily embrace the news. Little did I know, that gift was going to be multiplied by 3. On my 14th birthday, my mom unexpectedly went into labor. My dream birthday party was completely canceled, but the most shocking truth was waiting for me at the hospital. My mom gave birth to triplets, and they were all boys. Honestly, it wasn't like I immediately hated them. In the beginning, I genuinely tried my best to be a good, loving big sister and help my exhausted parents. I remember one exhausting afternoon. My mom had dozed off on the sofa out of sheer fatigue, while one of the babies started fussing and crying for food. Not wanting to wake her up, I tiptoed into the kitchen to prepare a bottle of formula myself. But I was so clumsy and inexperienced that I didn't screw the lid on tightly. When I brought it over and handed it to my little brother, the bottle popped open, spilling warm, sticky milk all over his face and his favorite blanket. He shrieked in shock and cried 10 times louder. My mom jolted awake, saw the mess, and immediately yelled at me for being careless and creating even more work for her, because now she had to bathe him and wash all the bedding again. Another time, while trying to hold one of them so my mom could eat, I accidentally let my fingernail scratch his cheek. The scolding I received that day made me feel like a criminal. Through all those clumsy, failed attempts to be a good sister, my desire to help slowly faded away. Instead, a heavy, dark feeling of being completely isolated, abandoned, treated unfairly, and profoundly resentful began to grow and fester inside my chest. Ever since the 3 babies were born, I clearly felt the profound loss through the tiniest changes in our daily routines. Before, every Sunday my dad would make me bear-shaped pancakes with maple syrup. Now, the dining table was flooded with dirty diapers, scattered milk bottles, and my parents looked like exhausted zombies with dark circles under their eyes from severe sleep deprivation. My breakfast was reduced to a dry piece of toast that I had to make myself. One morning, still half asleep after eating, I reached out onto the table to grab a napkin to wipe my mouth. Instead, I accidentally grabbed a clean baby diaper and wiped it directly across my face. When I realized what the weird texture was, I screamed loudly in absolute disgust. Instead of comforting me, my dad just sighed and said, "It's just a clean diaper. It's not like you actually ate it." That comment made me so mad that I threw my things and completely skipped breakfast. Another time, I had an incredibly important role at school, but my parents couldn't come to watch because they couldn't hire any babysitter willing to look after 3 infants at the same time. After performing, I stood isolated on the stage, watching the other kids hugging fresh flowers and smiling brightly while taking pictures with their families. I felt extremely out of place and lonely to the core. But the ultimate peak of my self-pity was when the 3 babies turned 1 year old. My parents demanded that I move up to the cramped attic, giving up my spacious, sun-drenched bedroom on the 2nd floor so it could be used as a shared room for the 3 kids. That afternoon, I carried my stuff up to the attic and exhaustedly flopped down onto the old mattress. A thick cloud of dust flew up from the mattress, making me cough violently. Just as I scrambled to sit up, a giant spider dropped from the ceiling right onto my head, causing me to scream loudly in pure panic. My frustration, exhaustion, and resentment at having to give up the best of everything for my 3 brothers had reached its absolute breaking point. When the 3 babies started walking and learning to talk, my house turned into a chaotic, noisy battlefield with no end in sight. I became extremely irritable and felt like an invisible spare part in my own home. To escape that suffocating loneliness, I started hanging out with a crowd of friends who specialized in racing heavy-duty motorcycles in the suburbs. There, I found a dazzling aura. I was praised and crowned by them as the leader, the fearless queen of speed. The intense attention, the applause, and the wild cheers of the hyped-up crowd filled the deep emotional void I was suffering at home. I started wearing headphones, completely ignoring the tired warnings and scoldings from my parents. I constantly stayed out late at night, threw on a rebellious leather jacket, and grew increasingly distant and alienated from my own flesh and blood family. Returning to the present, the final drop that overflowed the glass fell on my 16th birthday, the incredibly sacred Sweet 16 milestone for every American teenage girl. But a terrible incident occurred. All 3 of my baby brothers caught a virus from each other, simultaneously running dangerously high fevers and vomiting, forcing my parents to rush all 3 to the emergency room in the middle of the night. In their absolute panic and extreme exhaustion, my parents completely forgot that today was my birthday. I stood rooted to the spot in an empty, pitch-black house, staring blankly at a cheap store-bought cake I had bought myself at the supermarket. All the negative emotions I had repressed for so long violently burst open. I screamed, hurling the cake hard against the wall. I rushed out of the house, jumped onto my motorcycle, and sped wildly into the night, my vision completely blurred by streaming tears. Because I lost control of my speed and was crying too hard, I crashed my bike straight into the iron gate of a residential house on the street. A deafening crash rang out. Although I was lucky not to be seriously injured, the police arrived immediately and hauled me to the station on charges of destroying private property and illegal street racing. Sitting huddled in the freezing police station under glaring fluorescent lights, I frantically took out my phone to call and text for help from my ride-or-die brothers in the racing crew. The result was bitterly harsh. Some turned off their phones, others made excuses about being busy, and not a single person showed up to bail out their queen. I was desperate and trembling. Suddenly, the station doors burst wide open. My parents rushed in, out of breath. Their clothes were messy and stained with baby vomit, their faces showing extreme, haggard exhaustion. I froze completely as I watched my mother, a woman who always held her head high with pride, now sobbing hysterically, bowing her head and hunching her back to beg the police officer to show sympathy for the foolish, rebellious actions of her daughter. In that exact moment, my world seemingly collapsed, only to be rebuilt. I realized that the dazzling aura out there was just fake trash, and only a mother's love provided unconditional protection. I felt the ultimate, crushing regret for everything I had done. When I was brought back home, a tear-filled conversation took place. My parents choked up as they hugged me tight, apologizing for letting their busyness rob me of my important milestones, and for completely missing the sensitive emotions growing inside me. I also sobbed loudly, hugging them back, apologizing for my own selfishness, and for stupidly acting jealous towards my very own flesh and blood younger brothers. The most healing final scene happened the next morning, when I went to the hospital to visit my 3 baby brothers. As soon as they saw me walk through the door, the 3 little guys with IV needles in their arms cheered with pure joy. They lunged forward, grabbing onto my hands, their tiny lips babbling an unclear, adorable language. Happy-burr. My tears fell again, but this time they were tears of pure happiness. I opened my arms wide, hugging my brothers tightly to my chest, smiling as I realized a profound truth. Even if a family is sometimes neglectful or makes mistakes, in the very end, it remains the only place in this entire world that will never, ever abandon you. Dear listeners, have you ever felt jealous of your own siblings? Please leave a comment to share your story. Don't forget to give a 5-star rating for this podcast episode and follow the channel so we can meet again in our next healing stories.